So, Kartik, you are someone I know who constantly asks one question: how can I make it better? Right? So, I think this is a relevant question. Usually, an engineer asks this question over and over. And if you look around, every one of these things that we see have been improvements after improvements after improvements. If you look at this mic, it is picking up the voice better, and it has a remote cordless connection to the camera, right? Earlier, it used to be a long cable. So, improvements happened over and over and over. So, can you discuss about that habit that you innately created in yourself?
Yeah, what you've said is absolutely right. I think it's best understood if we observe a few examples and go through them in detail in terms of how the evolution happened. One of the first examples that comes to my mind is the way railway ticket booking used to happen. Let's go back to the days of the 80s. Back then, let me choose any large city, it'll typically have one or two counters at the main stations. If we talk about Chennai, it'll be Chennai Central and Chennai Egmore. These were the only two places where there was a big ticketing hall, long queue, about 10 different counters and long queues. And it was also not clear many times. In fact, sometimes certain counters were dedicated for certain type of trains, and the ticketing agent used to write in ledgers, making a note of which city to which city booking. It was almost about half a day used to go away.
Even in queuing, no, it would be separate lines.
Separate lines.
You would find out which one is shorter and go.
Yes, yes,
right?
Yes.
That's only later that you had a single line and then going to counters.
True, true, true. In fact, I was about to come to that. So I wanted to lay out the setting in the crudest form or the most non-optimal form.
Right.
And as you rightly said, the form of queuing was from a user angle, from a person who's booking, it was the most non-optimal, coming to think of today's date. Okay, but that was the best known back then. Now this used to take a lot of time both for the booking agent as well as for the passenger. Slowly things started evolving. They started realizing that there is a lot of commute that a passenger has to do from different parts of the city to go to the Central or Egmore railway stations. So they decided to do one level improvement. What if we started having booking offices in different parts of the city, maybe about 6 to 7 prominent parts, let's say T Nagar, Besant Nagar, Anna Nagar, so some spoilets.
One of the improvements or betterment that whoever was the chief thought about is, okay, let me have more number of counters.
Decentralize a bit so that at least they can go, if not everybody go to the nearest spot. So this is one level improvement. Obviously, it did save about maybe 15-20 minutes of commute.
Right.
It's a good level of improvement. The other point that you talked about was should everybody in every queue have to wait and hop and jump across queues?
Right.
They thought at least let's make it one more level easier. First, they brought in chairs for the passengers to be seated while they were waiting for ticket booking. This is a special improvement. Particularly, we are talking not just about youngsters and adults, but there were a lot of senior citizens who were going to book tickets.
Correct.
So this was another small improvement.
There was that empathy that
brought
coming into picture.
Exactly.
Make it better for the user.
Exactly. How do we, given that there is going to be a wait, how do we make it better for the people who are waiting, be it senior citizens or be it youngsters, because the wait time was long?
Thoughtful of those people who were thinking.
Exactly, exactly. And once these seats were brought in, now the optimal queuing that you mentioned earlier, that was brought in. So it was not it was not multiple different queues, but a single queue that was waiting, and depending on which agent was getting freed up, the first person used to go to that particular counter.
I remember I used to go along with my brother because two people and two different queues, whoever comes first
Correct,
can
correct,
book.
correct, correct.
Right? So we used to optimize that way.
Right. And or otherwise couples used to go. Sometimes there was a special ladies queue and husband and
Ladies
wife
queue,
used to stand and
exactly.
whichever works.
They were less in number usually.
So various different things had to
Strategies
be
we used
done
to
from
follow.
the passenger end.
Right.
Now they shifted that optimization or this thing to the railways end, right? So that it's a equal playground for all and it's a empathetic and comfortable environment for all. So these were some 2-3 small changes that started happening. And then technology had evolved, internet had slowly started coming in, and the railway ticketing system also moved towards electronic ticketing. Over a period of time, people thought with the number of people who are traveling also increasing constantly, what if we give the power of booking the ticket to the user? This was the
Fantastic,
fourth
no?
shift. This was a
Beautiful
very
shift.
big shift, but of course, this was enabled by the technology that was evolving. That was a very crucial element. The first three could have been done even without the technology part. It was everything being done at the railways end. But the fourth shift is parallelly with the growth of personal computers. Many people at least having access in their office space, some of them having access in their homes. So they started saying, okay, let's introduce electronic and internet ticketing for those of you who can. So they built a portal and this concept of self-booking started. But still a large amount of people still, because it was just penetrating,
Right.
only the other conveniences started applying. Now, a bridge between...
But at that time, they could also do away with the agents.
Yeah.
That was one more thing that happened, so that corruption also could come down.
The agents, it was there are two types of agents. One is the people who book in advance and
Right.
things like that. But agents were also needed because some people were not tech savvy.
Exactly.
Even if you open up the portals,
So licensed some of
licensed. So government introduced licensed agents.
Right. So they
whose counter
they
could
made
be
it
approached.
better so that access is there for those people who are not tech savvy.
Exactly. So that for senior citizens who don't, who are not yet comfortable, or even people who couldn't afford a PC or not go to a internet browsing center. So there was this part needed, but the good part that you said about was eliminating corruption by having authorized agents.
So eventually, what we are saying is, if I ask this question over and over, how can I make it better? How can I make it better? Whether it is from the user or designer point of view, the betterment starts to happen.
True, very true.
Right. So
Very
in
true.
that sense, this habit has a lot of advantages.
True, absolutely.
If it is developed, if the habit is practiced.
Yeah. How can I make it easier for the end user?
Easier for the end
What
user.
are the challenges? What are the struggles that the end user undergoes?
Right.
So this is the question that one needs to keep asking. And
before asking about, okay, how can I make it better?
Yes. So
Very
this the focus on this question would help
right.
lead us to the
It's a
answers.
napt example that you gave.
Yeah. And the last to conclude, as of now, this is where we stand, and tomorrow we don't know where we will head. But this internet to the mobile. Now we have a mobile app because a lot of us go through the internet through our mobile devices.
Right.
It's no longer the laptops or PCs. So you have a mobile app which is different from the internet-based booking. So it has brought in the convenience. Now you don't even have to carry your tickets. You just have an SMS.
Not only that, it also helped in terms of sustainability goals. That is, I now reduce the use of paper.
Yes.
Things of that sort also.
Yes.
So in a way, clean environment goal also is met.
Has gotten aligned to it. Yes. So this was one example when we study at every stage what are the challenges faced and how the convenience can be brought in. I'll probably quote two more examples that come to my mind, and similarly we can extend this pattern everywhere.
Any personal example that you can give in your profession, or the current you're an entrepreneur right now?
Right.
So any particular example that you can give from your own experience?
Right.
Because you've been, that's why I'm saying you've been asking this question How can I make it better, 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 better? So, and therefore, we must have definitely started with something and try to make it better and better.
Right, right, right. So, in the entrepreneurial stint, originally I started with board and card games. Okay, which I feel are very interactive in nature. It brings the crowd together in a setting, has bonding, and creates that fun environment and interactivity, peer learning. It enables.
Right.
It did have those advantages, and I was using that often. But when the pandemic started, it was, we had to live in a world where we had to be socially isolated, social distancing was mandatory, and we had to leverage technology, and all the advantages of what the board game offered had to be done through technology. And that is when I started embracing some of the digital platforms. One of the things I realized was I had these are two different worlds. It's not exactly the same. You may not get the same effect, but there are benefits of both that you need to cross leverage. So you need to create a game which enabled the people to interact with each other, which was being actually provided by the conferencing service. The fun and creativity and the learning part was still retained from the constituents of the board game. This is something that I could immediately recollect. Another thing that the users seem to want, particularly when I was doing for educators always are not able to go out of, and probably as a society, all of us are not able to go out of the metrics or how much did a person score. Okay, it is play not for the sake of the sake.
Part.
Yes, and therefore any digital game which just is for the sake of play doesn't resonate with them. So this is again an empathy factor for the educator, right? We have to empathize with the educator and use those digital platforms that measure when the user logged in, how long did they play, how much did they score,
so that
in what attempt.
It makes it better for the educator to assess appropriately.
Yes. Every workshop where I introduce something, can this be used for a test? No, I said this is a game which you use it for making the class light, and it should take away the burden of a test. Anyway, you keep conducting tests, that will be the regular assessments. These are supplements to ensure that the class is understood in a fun-filled way. It's a classroom interactivity. Whenever I said that, can I use it for my test? So this is again an empathy factor. So I started going towards those platforms which are capable of giving those detailed analytics in terms of how much did each student perform and how did they perform in every single question. How was this question answered by different users? Like which it measures the difficulty level of the question.
At the same time, the fun and other part had to be retained.
Had to be retained. Yes.
So that's how you made it better.
So both, it is it is made relevant now for the audience. Because if you make something which is not relevant, they are not able to relate and they are not able to apply it in their world.
Right.
So it has to be a mixture of both.
Kartic, you have held positions even nearer to the top level in your organization when you were working in a corporate, and especially at a higher level, you needed to do planning, right? You have a lot of people working working under you, and you had to plan for the next quarter that way, right? And planning was an important activity for you. Can you give an idea of this practice that has been in existence, and also you've been practicing? Must have been a second nature for you by now. Can you tell me about it?
Sure. So, when I took over a large account, I could immediately recollect there was it. In fact, I had joined a company back then, and it was every day was a learning. Every day was chaos, honestly. for the first 3 months, I was trying to find out what the day, you visualize something for the day, you have some plan of how the day should go, but it will go completely differently. And then in hindsight, you will recollect, were these the things that are also to be done, or did they get wasted, right? But over a period of time, I realized that those were also expectations from the team. I'll give you more specific examples. I had been working in a product company where the primary focus was software development and software testing. Most of the discussions every day were relevant to requirements. It was confined to the software itself. It didn't go beyond that, because there was a separate team that did implementation. There was a separate team that did customer facing, business development, etc. It was very demarcated in that sense. So the engineering team had to focus only on the product. I had shifted to a services industry where all these lines, while they were somewhat demarcated, were not really demarcated. Everybody had to pitch in various different angles to different things. So it's particularly at the leadership and management level. It was not probably true at the lower levels, but after a certain level of managers, senior managers, etc., some part of it was expected
from the other.
And the other thing I realized was there was also a practice expectation within the company, as in you are a part of an account, but there are many accounts within that domain or in practice. You have to help out each other. You had to maintain certain best practices. You have to work with the corporate teams, sharing your best practices and also learning from them. These were all not written or codified ones, but you had to learn that these were also going to be a part of your schedule every day, or it used to come now and then at least. And then there were other set of internal teams, like there was a team called Delivery Excellence, there was a team called Innovation. These were all corporate level teams which were trying to study the best practices of different accounts, trying to monitor them, not in a strict monitoring sense, but trying to interact and soft govern them, right, from an organizational perspective. So there was so much of this matrix that we were a part of. So it was not just the product, it was not just the developing the software, testing it. You had to deal with these internal expectations. On top of it, there was, of course, your client counterparts, your on-site teams with whom you had to interface. Each of these teams had a different set of expectations. Just understanding their language and expectations took time at every single level.
So all these were elements needed for planning.
Exactly. That discovery took about 3 to 6 months. In fact, I would say it took longer.
I see.
But the awareness that these all had to be planned out, that awareness came in only after, I would say, even 6 months. Okay, so your job is not done yet. So then, on top of it, you have to deal with the day-to-day chaos in terms of, customer escalations, some employee dissatisfaction when the job markets had been opening up, so there were a lot of attritions. So people had to be replaced at both the leadership level as well as at the junior levels. So documenting all of these was the first job. And then how do you create a structure? Because this is the pattern that's going to repeat time and again for the next couple of years.
Correct.
Of course, the cycle may vary, but this is going to be the broad patterns. So first is, the good part was the first 6 months gave an idea of what are the patterns. The pattern identification was the first thing.
Okay.
And then the next part is, who is best doing what? The apportioning of who's good at what.
Kind of planning, man management.
Man management.
Or human management.
Human management. Now, all of these leaders were also the team leaders were also having their regular jobs. On top of it, they had to be given 1 or 2 additional responsibilities, so that as an entire team, if somebody is being asked for account innovation, there are at least a couple of people who can report and interface and work with them.
Right. And also you needed to take care of fault tolerances. If somebody falls, there is a corrective mechanism.
Mechanism in place. If somebody needs delivery excellence dashboard in terms of how different projects are doing for internal company purposes, there was a team that was created, and all these again had to be in terms of they were small teams, so that it is not having individual person dependency. Sometimes stars may arise out of that. Individuals.
Understood.
So that also had to be de-risked, because sometimes that person may be on vacation or may have some personal contingency. It always doesn't help to depend on one person as a system. So planning not only had to be identifying the tasks that needed to be done, finding the right people to do it,
Resources?
but finding the right set of resources, so to de-risk it, and a structure to monitor it. After setting all this in place, sometimes, because in one sense everybody gets pulled in different direction. Once you give a responsibility, this is also a part of their responsibility, has to be monitored.
Right.
Because the client responsibility will always pull that person first.
Correct.
So keeping a set of meetings, periodic meetings every bi-weekly, just to ensure that this additional responsibility also gets, persons make progress on this, they start reporting their challenges on this, and they make progress on this.
Very good. So all these constitute
the planning. So planning essentially involves identifying the patterns of work that come across, identify all the bottlenecks that people face, create the systems, identify the best resources, and finally monitoring or system of governance by which you make sure that things work as you designed it.
Actually, they say, no, it's okay even if you fail after planning, but it's not okay if you fail to plan itself.
Yeah, you cannot fail to plan. You cannot fail to plan. Planning is essential.
Yeah, planning is essential. Plan may fail, but
don't fail to plan.
Yeah.
Have a plan B, plan C kind of a thing.
Exactly. So you've been developing games. You've been a play developer. So you must be having products that come out in terms of games, video games, or any other kind of games. By now, you would have identified certain tools by which these can be developed. And by tools, what I mean is, if I have to, let's say, screw or unscrew a screw, the right tool that I have to use is a screwdriver. I can't use my hand. I can't take a spoon and then try. All this may try the screw, but the best one is the right tool that I use. So you must have figured out the right tools and platforms that would be needed, and how that has made life easy for you. Can you describe that?
Yeah, sure. Like I was indicating, during the pandemic, we had to shift from the board games to the online games.
Right.
My first thought was, what will be the kind of online games possible? Back then I had no knowledge. So I had to study what was available. I did a lot of reading, and I realized that there were some type of games called hyper casual games, which offered some simple mechanics, and we started developing from scratch using a Unity tool. Started coding.
So there was a tool called Unity tool.
Yeah, Unity, which is very, very popular. In fact, just used to develop very, very sophisticated games.
Oh.
But we did very simple games using that. But after a few months, we realized whatever games we developed, there is evolution happening in the game platform industry. So because everybody thinks in a certain pattern, instead of developing that pattern from ground up, game developers or their tech tools have built in those patterns as plug and plays in some of their tools. So for example,
better tools came
up which provided these as plug and plays, these as templates, whereas we were actually earlier building these templates from scratch. So for example, just to make it easier, if we were building a crossword tool, now you don't have to build a crossword tool. Crossword template is available. You just
Template
need
is
to key
available.
in the words and their clues.
Understood.
And
So
the crossword will be built.
So that has become a tool.
That has, yeah, the tool will
become
be
a platform.
that platform offers many such templates.
So it makes it easy
Makes it easy.
to produce a crossword puzzle.
It makes it easy to provide a crossword puzzle. Similarly, another tool will make it easy to build a
Jumbled words.
jumbled words, matching patterns.
Matching patterns. So these are certain platforms or templates or tools which makes life
Easier.
in terms of whatever task that you take.
Correct.
So in life, identifying such tools help us in terms of having a better life.
Having a better life. Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.